1, 2, 3, 4. I got thoughts running through my head. I got thoughts, can't you see? I got thoughts, the books I read. I got thoughts, won't you listen to me?
Insur-redneck-tion. It wasn't about equality. It was about being the default, being the privileged and not wanting to lose that privilege, not wanting to lose that power. And it still is today. That insurrection, that riot, was about white people getting pissed off that their guy didn't win the election and claiming their vote was stolen because of fraud. But if you look at the places where they claim there was so much fraud, it was essentially the swing states, the states where, generally speaking, most presidential elections are decided. And many of the places where they claim fraud happened was places like Detroit or Atlanta, where majority African American population vote. Georgia, Stacey Abrams and her group of people got the vote out and did the business, did the work, and people came out and they voted. And it's just galling to see these people claim that Georgia was stolen. Georgia was stolen. You know, the Democrats were not in power in Georgia at all. Secretary of State Raffensperger is a Republican. The governor, lieutenant governor, Republican. Hell, the governor, Brian Kemp, was the Secretary of State in his election in 2018. He was the official in charge of making sure that the vote was legal and correct and all that of his own election, which, ought to be illegal, period, just because of the conflict of interest. But even worse in his case is that there's many instances of things that just happen to be legalish, but were clearly designed to disenfranchise African American voters in the state. And he won by the thinnest of margins. You don't steal elections where your party, your political apparatus is not in place. It doesn't happen. Because the sheer logistics required for the kind of election fraud that keeps getting brought up by Republicans over and over again when they talk about voter ID laws and all this kind of stuff is impossible. So let's say you need 1 million votes to win, and Trump lost by like 7 million, 8 million votes, something like that. In order to use the kind of election fraud that voter ID laws fight against, supposedly, you have to have 8 million people willing to go to jail to cast a second ballot somewhere. And none of those folks would rat you out? Come on. No, it's just that's not how it works at all. That kind of voter fraud is just bullshit, and it has been proven that it just doesn't happen. But there's all these idiotic election fraud claims, and none of them make any sense. And I love the fact that a lot of the folks who were, screaming about them from the rafters, Giuliani, Sidney Powell, Jenny Ellis, Linwood, whatever. I love that these people Newsmax OANN is another one, Fox News. They all shut their traps when Dominion said, if you keep saying this bullshit, we are going to sue you. Because it's bullshit, and they know it's bullshit. Let's talk about the president, soon to be former president, the twice impeached president. Let's talk about his role in this. And I'll talk about some of the other Republican officials, the Senator Mo Brooks from Alabama, Paul Gosar, Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz, Laura Boebert. I mean, these are names of people who should be expelled from their place and or jailed. let's talk about what President Dump Truck said. He said, we're going to march down to the Capitol. We're going to fight like hell to save our country. We're not going to have a country. You have to show strength, yada, 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 yada. As then he then fucked off back to the White House to watch on TV while having a hamburger. A lot of the people who will defend him, and probably when he has to defend himself in court, are going to claim that this was free speech. And even more, once he got banned from Twitter and every social media platform on the planet, all the followers get up in arms saying this is censorship and it's free speech, it's silencing free speech and yada, 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 yada. Okay, first off, free speech is not infinite. Yes, you are free to say whatever you want. But as I've said a few times, freedom of speech does not insulate you from the consequences of that speech. Like, it's one of those scenarios that's always been put up when this kind of discussion is had. You can't just wander into a crowded theater and scream fire, people get trampled and die, and you be just completely fearful. So, well, I just said fire, I have free speech. You can't do that. That's actually been adjudicated. That's precedent. So, free speech is not completely inviolate. And you got the cat over here who apparently wants to be on camera today. Hey, kitty, what you doing? Don't mind the cat. She doesn't listen to me anyway. But free speech is not inviolate. There are consequences for certain types of speech. Inciting a riot is one of those things. Sedition, inciting insurrection, that's some other areas where free speech is not just infinite. You can't sit there and claim it's free speech. What Trump and Mo Brooks and these others did is essentially, they ginned up a mob and pointed that mob at the Capitol, at Mike Pence, as if that would do something. But more importantly, the screaming and hollering about him getting banned from Twitter and banned from YouTube and all these people talking about how, this is such a chilling effect on free speech. Well, yes, but not the way you're portraying it. Because here's the funny part. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Reddit, all these other places, they are not government entities. Freedom of speech only protects you from censorship by the government. It does not say that you have the right to go on someone's social media platform and shout whatever the hell you want. That's not how this works. Twitter, despite being a very public forum, is still a privately owned business. And a privately owned business has the right to refuse service to customers. I mean, the whole free market and businesses not being regulated, I thought that was one of the main, planks of the GOP conservative platforms. Individual freedom and freedom of businesses. Businesses are people and they should not be regulated and constrained by the government. Well, they're not being. They're restraining, they're policing their own fucking platform. Trump going on Twitter and ginning up a mob to attack the Capitol is as if I went into a McDonald's and started yelling in people's faces, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to shoot you. That's a threat. And McDonald's, even if they don't get me arrested, McDonald's has every right to say, you're causing a disturbance in our restaurant. You got to go. Twitter is no different. Amazon, YouTube, no different. This is their platform. This is the thing they built, and you don't have control over it, nor does the government. That's the way you guys say you believe until it's pointed at you. So you can just throw that argument right out there. Now, there is something to be said, and I should probably have a discussion on this someday, about how powerful companies like Twitter and Facebook and Google and Apple and all that can be. As a matter of fact, the entire premise of Cyberpunk and of my Cyberpunk series, the Bridge Chronicles, is that corporations have taken over, in some cases, local and state governance, and have exercised that economic power for evil, or for oppressive means, or whatever, and how that is too strong a power. So there is something to be said for that argument, but you're not making the people, ONN and Newsmax and all these people in Parler, oh, you fuckheads, the argument you're making about free speech isn't the right argument and doesn't hold water. Parler doesn't have a right to exist and use Amazon servers if Amazon doesn't want their Nazi hate speech on their servers. Amazon can tell you, get the fuck off. And it is not up to them whether or not another platform will let you host on their servers. That's not their problem. Nor should it be. Now again, I am a firm believer in antitrust legislation and restricting monopolies, breaking some of these big places like Facebook up. I have no problem with that. But let's have that discussion and not have a discussion about whether Nazis can force Amazon to let them carry hate, to let them just spew hate speech and incite riots. Because they can't. But again, this is all back to white supremacy. It's all back to white privilege being afraid that its privilege is being revoked. And to be fair, it is in a way. You're not the top dog anymore. You're not the default. Or at least you shouldn't be. Real equality means that other people have the same opportunities you do. And one of the protesters, Elizabeth from Knoxville, had a little video online I saw where she's crying because she got hit with mace and they shot at us, and they're not supposed to do that. They're supposed to shoot BLM, not us. We're here storming the Capitol. Well, why are they supposed to shoot Black Lives Matter protesters who are inherently nonviolent by the very nature and by their mission statement? Why should they get shot, but you don't? Because you're white? You may not say that, although you may, because you may be dumb enough to believe it. But that's certainly what I would infer from that statement, is that the cops shouldn't be shooting white folks. Cops should be shooting the black folks. Maybe Elizabeth from Knoxville can comment on here and tell me that I'm wrong. I'd love to hear that. But and again, the real estate developer with the private jet. What's being taken from you? What is literally being taken from you? You're probably more comfortable than 70-80% of people out there who work just as hard as you and deserve every bit of freedom that you have. What's being taken from you? How many? Is it just that you don't want to have to sell a home to a black family? Is that it? Is it that simple? You surely haven't. You surely aren't just going to say that out loud. I mean, maybe you are. Let's face it. If one thing Trump has done, he's made sure all these fucking yahoos think that they can just say any bullshit they want and nobody should punch them in the mouth for it. God damn, we had a whole generation we call the greatest generation, whose entire thing was we punch Nazis in the face. Nazi punching. It's not just for the greatest generation anymore. But just take a step back and think. Think about what Martin Luther King was saying. He wasn't saying, I have a dream where black people lord it over white people, where white people are second-class citizens. He was saying, I have a dream where my kids can play with your kids and nobody blinks. I can go to the voting booth, cast my ballot for who I believe is best for this country, in my personal best interest, and my vote is just as valid as the white man's. It's not about who wins or loses, because frankly, if we're all together in this, if we're all equal, we all win. Because as I've talked about diversity in the past, in diversity in screenplays and screenwriting and movies and TV shows and books, when you start to get another person's viewpoint, your worldview expands that much greater to include that many more things that you may not have experienced or thought about. And not only does it help you with that, it helps that person who grew up without somebody on TV that looked like them, but it helps them feel like, hey, this is my America too. It's not just theirs. It's not an exclusive club that I don't have any right to even hope to dream to be in. It's all ours. We all benefit from equality. The election wasn't stolen. There's been plenty of elections that have been stolen, and the votes of black people have been stolen for centuries, decades. And yet, Black Lives Matter, one of the main reasons they, and Martin Luther King Jr.'s movement, the Civil Rights Movement, one of the reasons they had to be nonviolent is because they knew how easy it is for a system that did not want to change to demonize and demoralize a movement based on being able to scare people, being able to say, oh, look at those black people protesting. They're going to burn things down, and they're going to riot and loot and steal and all that. And I mean, that's the bullshit that's thrown around today about BLM, is they're coming to my town and they're going to riot and loot and burn things down and rape my white women. And I mean, if they didn't, I'm pretty sure that if you tally it up, all the arrests for protests this summer are probably going to be less, and certainly less severe, than the arrests will be for the people at the Capitol. Because those folks at the Capitol, they committed federal crimes. Those are big boy crimes. It's not just, I stood in front of a police officer, resisting arrest. Yeah, I stopped him from trying to beat the shit out of me by, covering my face with my hands. This is white supremacy at its most naked and evil, and its most ineffectual. Because again, they went in there thinking, they were going to change the result of the election. What have they done? Well, they managed to make Washington, D.C. a fortress. Maybe they've got another attack somewhere planned. They managed to get 4 of their own people killed, and killed a police officer. And again, these are all folks who are like, Blue Lives Matter, and we got to support our police, the boys in blue, except when they stop us from doing what we want to do. If we want to do something, they just let us go through because, we're on their side. Well, no, you're not on their fucking side. You got an officer killed. And you're lucky it was only one. The other one apparently died of suicide because of the PTSD that this caused. But, you had another cop that was almost trampled because you fuckheads wanted to burst through a tunnel. One woman trampled. There's talk, although I can't confirm it, that one dipshit died by tasing himself in the balls, which I will never not find funny. One woman who was the Navy vet, Air Force vet, who got shot trying to break into the Senate chambers, and another one fall off something? I don't remember. It was all stupid deaths. I mean, the irony of somebody carrying a Gadsden flag that said "Don't tread on me," who gets killed by being trampled in a crowd of Muppets trying to charge the Capitol, is just delicious. I can't get enough of that kind of irony. That struggle against white supremacy and racism is not ever going to be over, because all it takes is one little flashpoint and one group of people who have been inculcating hate for decades. That would be the Republican Party, by the way. Is all it takes to just gin up a riot that attempts to take its power back from what it sees as inferior people. If you were in the Capitol, you stormed the Capitol, or you support what they did at the Capitol, and you want to try to claim it's not about racism, get the fuck out of here. I don't want to hear it. I don't believe it. You may believe it, but I don't got to. It's racism. It's white supremacy. It's fascism. It's attempting to install an authoritarian dictator who does not have any legal reasons that he should retain power after this Wednesday. I am the author. This has been my thoughts. If you like what I'm saying, you can, click on the little subscribe-y, likey, dingy bell thing down at the bottom. Also, visit the links in the description to find out where to buy my books. Buy and read my books, review them on Amazon or wherever else you buy them. My Stepping Stone Cycle series, the entire series, is now on Kindle Unlimited, so it's Kindle exclusive. But if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read it for free. Happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day. I am the author, and this has been my thoughts.